be, I think, I mean, my experience can be summarized in a way that there must be a kind of element of randomness to explore possibilities how to connect different communities. Now, in the case of the yeast cell, in the case of common stresses like heat shock, it has been already fixed by evolution what has to be connected to survive. But I'm pretty sure if we would experience, I didn't have data on that, new types of stresses for yeast cell, I don't know what type of stress, which is seldom experienced, then you would see different kind of bridges, which would be not that, I mean, not the same, certainly not the same.
Yeah, the problem with your yeast cells, of course, is as you indicate, is you have very indirect data about what is actually interacting with what.
Yeah, just measuring it in a real experiment.
You're just measuring that certain proteins tend to be common at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Or not even the proteins, you're measuring the mRNA, but I think it's...
Now in stress it's more correlating with the protein levels, but you're right, it's indirect. We are just measuring the raw data right now in stress yeast cells. So
yeah,
in a year,
if you could find a different paradigm to measure that. I like the example with the phones during the bombing. I think that is probably pretty clear data. In this case, there is less interpretation difficulty, but it would be nice if you could find other kind of stressful situations in other kind of stress systems. Like, I don't know, maybe with insects, if you would have, for example, an anthill, if you put your foot inside an anthill, you create a big stress and the ants start behaving very differently. But how would you measure the interactions between the ants? And obviously, maybe there are methods.
There is a group in India, in Bangalore, where there are, I think, 60 PhD students assigned to various groups of ants, and the ants are color-coded.
You have to watch every ant. For that you need a lot of students. It's a very patient ones. Other examples are bacterial colonies and slime molds, where there have been quite some experiments. But again, it's difficult to find networks in there, because you don't see really. With the slime molds, it's more, I think it may be easier because they tend to stick together, that's why they're called slime molds, and they follow certain paths.
Yeah.
And at the European Conference on Complex Systems in Brussels, we saw quite some interesting research where they had both observations about slime molds and simulations, where, for example, they explore mazes. And they seem to be pretty intelligent in the sense of finding the shortest path through the maze. I'm not sure whether with these methods that could be explored, because it wouldn't be difficult to stress a slime mold, I suppose.
But
just make it hot or cold or...
there is this research by Eshel Ben Jacob, and there is slime molds organized differently under different stress conditions. The shapes of the colonies really change, and it can be seen that even one colony on a surface of glass it creates different level of stress, because the food there is a food concentrate that can change over the surface. And also, if the surface is more rigid or less rigid, it makes their lives more difficult or more easy to move. So it plays with this in order to create different, the same colony diverges, and they use some signaling on the genetic level and chemical level. They use signaling between the cells, and they organize really differently in different regions. So this is to do with the
I could imagine that if a slime mold is pretty distributed over an environment, so that you have maybe some local patches that are more clustered and others that are farther away, and then you increase the stress, that you might see that they tend to retract to a smaller number of more dense patches. Yes. That's the kind of experiment that you might do, and I could imagine giving this kind of results.
But there is another question I was thinking about when you remarked about that events of stress, there is an increased modularization and separation between the modules. So if we look at a system that is overgoing a certain stress event or stress phase, the question is how long after the stress event has passed the system or the network still retains this modularity. And in a manner of speaking, you can say that a long history of many events like this, you can, in the structure of the network, you can see as if a memory of the events that happened. And it would be interesting to see if you can extract some historical facts about the development of the network.
I absolutely agree. We are just exploring this, so maybe half a year I can tell more about the data. We have programmed for that by now. In yeast, this event is really transient. So after 4 to 6 hours, the modularization change is pretty much getting back to normal. So you're right. I mean, this is usually at this stressful event, and after that, it's gradually kind of decreasing. As the intensity was decreasing in the phone calls, I mean, then you could see it very visually.
And what happens if you expose this same colony to a periodic level of stress without allowing it to relax to the...
Obviously, I mean, I don't recall any data from the network point of view when it has been measured. But as a general output, usually the system is losing the sensitivity for the stress because it's over-exhausting the resources after a while. I mean, after this, if you apply this periodic stress, that usually 3-4 occasions are still okay. But after 4, 5, 6 occasions, it's getting deteriorated, the response. And if it's continued like that, then it's desensitized. So
okay.
no more response.
The idea of stress and flexibility also reminds me of a theory about emotions. You have a theory of positive emotions by Barbara Fredrickson, the burden and build theory, that says that a positive emotion opens your mind, it broadens your mind, it makes you more flexible, you might say more open to all kinds of experiences. While a negative emotion is what focuses your mind on the thing that causes your negative emotion. If there is a danger, you should have all your attention put on that one danger or that one problem. If there is nothing negative, then it's best to open your mind to all kinds of new stimuli, because then that's more the exploration phase.
Yeah.
And I think that fits very nicely, and it's a theory that has been confirmed by a number of experiments.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
And it would correspond with this idea of the stress leading to more kind of clustering towards the known and sticking to the more rigid view.
Yeah, actually, panic type of events fragment. Yeah, well, this is the same thing. When bad news, like rumor propagation in a social network, and this rumor is a really bad news, causing maybe panic or I mean this type of behavior, then the social network starts to fragment. So, yeah.
The social network starts to fragment, and people start to behave more like the others in the group.
Yeah.
And that's the danger with panic, for example. If everybody's running to the same exit in a burning building, that creates a problem. If people would independently look for all the different exits, the problem might never have, the disaster might never happen. And indeed, a condition of stress tends to focus you on one obvious solution, the one off probably that is most visible within your neighborhood, and to close your mind for other solutions.
So if you perceive a crisis node as a positive emotion, then you can react in a more creative way, and then you can actually survive. You may survive the situation better.
Yeah, of course. If you are in a panic, you're not inclined to look around and say, what could I do?
Yeah. Oh, thanks God, it's panic again.
Is it possible to say that the flexible system consume more energy than a rigid one, or the contrary?
That's a very good question, actually. In terms of, yeah, I would say, in principle, I would agree, because a rigid system is a kind of conservative system in the sense that if you have an input in one end, then it comes out more or less the same input at the other end.
Mhm.
However, on the contrary, in the flexible system, it's dissipating your input. So, well, it consumes more energy. I think that's yeah. I cannot recall really nice calculations on that, but it's quite.
I mean, to put it in physical terms, a flexible system would be more like a gas, and the rigid system more like a condensed matter.
Yeah.
And then the in-between would be more like a liquid.
Yeah.
I'm not sure in human systems such as, for instance, royalty, you know, Louis XIV, there is a lot of energy to maintain the system, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh.
The rigid system.
The rigid.
Yeah, but otherwise, that energy would anyway have been used and dissipated.
I don't.
Well,
I think, and I would perceive that the inherent, genetically inbuilt capability or liked exploration, what we inherited from our monkey ancestors, that has to be counteracted in social situations when you would like to maintain a rigid system.
Mm-hmm.
And that is requiring energy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we are random. I mean, we love randomness, we love
Yeah.
novelty. I mean, this is why, I mean, this is an inbuilt capacity.
So it could be very costly to maintain a rigid
Yeah,
system.
yeah, yeah. This is why dictators are having a hard time, fortunately. But they can survive, unfortunately, for quite long.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory that with agriculture and afterwards industrial civilization, actually people were forced to become much more rigid because they were supposed to do repetitive tasks. While before as hunter-gatherers, there is no repetition because every day there are different foods to be found, different problems to be confronted with. You cannot predict, you cannot plan, you cannot. While a farmer has to work in his field every day, do the same movements, cutting the things, and it requires an ideology and a culture that suppresses this exploratory spirit. And I think that, in a sense, we have been psychologically stressed since the emergence of agriculture, and it's only in the last few decades that rigid ideology is kind of slowing down and kind of dissipating a bit. But I think that a lot of psychological problems are still caused by the contradiction between, for example, what you learn in religion, that you have to do always your duty and not enjoy yourself and not have sex and not do this and not do that, with a modern free society where you can do all these things, but it creates stresses because people tend to go from the one extreme to the other and they don't find the balance.
So it's maybe an early signal for critical transition is the dissipation of energy, or over-dissipation.
Probably, yeah. There probably would be more dissipation, but
Not necessarily.
It's a question.
Also, when the system has a lot of resources, it tends to waste more. Not necessarily close to a transition.
no, I mean it's I don't know.
Yes. But if you see
If it starts dissipating more energy than it used before, that may be an indication of a transition. I don't know.
I think that in terms of, if we speak about flexible and rigid systems, in terms of the state space topography, a rigid system can be characterized by very defined basins of convergence and very deep attractors, while the flexible system, the topography of the state space is more complicated. It has a lot of shallow basins, ridges, and limit cycles, all sorts of. And there is a characteristic, a structural characteristics of the state space that can differentiate between this and that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Those three characteristics for a system that's coming close to a critical transition. Two of them were obvious. That's the perturbations take more time to repeat, and that there are more inherent large fluctuations. But the third, the middle one, actually, the self-similarity there, I wasn't quite clear what is meant by that.
Well, the phenomenological part was that if you just kind of compare, I mean, you take time frames and then you compare the output in the time frames, then it becomes more similar to each other. So, I mean, it's a kind of phenomenological statement. What can be the rationale behind that? That's a good question.
Do you have any question of this phenomenon?
Yes, the panic in the bourse, in the stock market, for example, if there is a transition, everybody sells.
Does the same, okay.
Or everybody buys. But when you have a well-balanced market, some of them are selling, some of them are buying, and different kind of investments.
I think I see maybe a reason. If we assume that the transition is caused by a building up tension that pushes a kind of a selective pressure that pushes the system towards a different regime, anything that goes in the direction that follows that pressure will tend to be imitated by others following the same direction. So in that sense, instead of fluctuation going in all directions, the fluctuation will tend to go in the same direction.
But the thing
Maybe
is,
that's what they mean.
yes, yeah, alignment. It has to do with aligning forces. But when you say self-similarity, I was thinking about similarity
About
in
fractals,
different levels of the system. Something that looks, I didn't understand exactly what do you mean.
Usually they measure it in a temporal scale, not in a complexity, time series scale, yeah. I mean, so I think you were right, that if they had measured it in this kind of complexity level scale, then they would see, I'm pretty sure, a similar behavior. But I think it's much more difficult to measure it on that scale that you mentioned.
But that's maybe more like the self-organized criticality, the sandpile model, where you are in a critical state and you have similarity between the big events and the small events. And then you have the power law that says that the small events are more frequent than the big events proportional to their size. So maybe that's what they mean.
Yeah, maybe with such a phenomenon.
With criticality, you typically have this kind of power law fluctuations.
So it's a scale-free behavior. So you see the same behavior on different scales. This is what you mean, or more or less the same behavior.
I've always been a little bit suspicious about the self-organized criticality, about its being so universal. It was a nice mathematical model with a sandpile that they have tried to generalize a little bit too quickly to too many things, and I don't think it works so generally. But
it might be that there is something to do with symmetry breaking. When a system is approaching a transition, it approaches also to symmetry breaking in some parameters or functions or behaviors. And it might be to do, but it would be interesting to investigate further why this is a phenomena of self-similarity is how it is connected to this phase transition, not a transition.
But I know the original work, I think it was Martin Schaffen or something, the first author of that Nature paper. He's an ecologist who has been looking, for example, at lakes and the switch from one regime to another. And the most spectacular example is a lake that is clear water, that is muddy water, or water to which you can't see. And they have been doing experiments where they added all kinds of chemicals or animals or plants to a lake to see at what stage it would shift from the one stage to the other. And that's how they found out this kind of behavior. And then, of course, with mathematical models, you can to some degree justify it.
Yeah, there is an algae, I think, a certain type of algae which either grows or, yeah, that makes the ecosystem more simple and more kind of extreme to follow.
But that is of course very useful if you want to apply it to the societal level, because I'm now in a panel of the World Economic Forum on complex systems, among others with Albert Barabasi, and we are supposed as complex system specialists to give advice to the others about world problems and about, especially about dynamic resilience. And that was of course one of the suggestions, like this is an important phenomenon, this criticality, like can we find the right symptoms to say, like, let's say the economy or the financial system is nearing this transition, we should be extremely careful. It would be nice if you could really, out of this kind of research, develop a kind of a set of symptoms, something like a diagnosis that's on the basis of that you can say you are in a critical condition, you should take your medicine immediately or something bad may happen.
Yeah. That would be very good. Yeah.
I'm always a little bit cynical about mathematical techniques. Mathematicians, they make nice models, and in the model it all fits together, and then they kind of tend to project it onto reality, and in reality it never works out that nicely.
Yeah, the Nobel Prizes on economy in the past kind of decades.
Economists make very beautiful mathematical models, which in practice never make the right predictions.
Yeah.
But also your idea about aging as approaching this critical transition, that's also very interesting, especially if you say about this kind of more repetition of behaviors. It's obvious that as you age, you will become more sensitive to perturbations, and if something happens, it's more likely to be serious. Let's say if an old person falls, he's more likely to break his leg than if he's young.
Yeah.
But the repetitiveness of behavior, I think is a very important strengthening factor in aging. Because I think it's what I said about this order from noise principle.
Yeah.
The order from noise principle is the idea that if you shake things too, they're likely to find a more robust configuration than if they stay in the way they have always been. It's a simple method to avoid local optima. By shaking it, by adding noise, by adding variation, it explores a much larger part of its fitness landscape, so it's more likely to find a better optimum. But in aging, you might say, it's also a question of adapting to changing circumstances. You may have an optimum in your present circumstances, like, let's say, typical example, an old person that has been living for the last 30 years in the same house and has the same routine of always going to the same bakery at the same hour and going to bed in the same way, it's optimized. But if then something happens, like for example, the old lady breaks her leg, she can no longer get up her staircase, the whole optimal system is completely destroyed. There is no flexibility to go to something new. While if that old lady would, let's say, have forced herself to change her habits from time to time and try out many different things, maybe she would have found ways to continue doing what she did, even with a broken leg.
That's right. Yeah.
So this is a kind of an obvious example, but I suspect that the same is happened at the physiological level, that inside the body there are a lot of processes like that that have found kind of an optimal arrangement for the present circumstances, but the moment these present circumstances change, it's very rigid, it's completely no longer optimal. While, as you said, with the flexible one, you're less efficient in one particular behavior, but you're more efficient in a wide range of behaviors. And my personal theory is that you can delay aging a lot by forcing yourself to constantly challenging new situations. Now I'm trying it to myself, but how it works. I'm not yet old enough to see how well it will work when I'm 80 or so, but it's an experiment.
If it works, you will never be old enough.
Yeah.
no, but then you would. I've reached the stage age where I'm old enough that I see that most of my contemporaries are getting all kind of illnesses and diseases and body fat and so on that I don't have. So I'm already seeing some effects that I can say are signs that it works. But yeah, it's too early to...
Gathering with the high school class can be a very teaching example.
Yeah, I did that recently. I did that recently.
My God,
that was
it's
one
at
of
the
the
same age. I mean, these
yeah,
people are
that's one of the things that I saw. We also have another person in our research group who is actually an aging researcher, Mario Sceriasis, and he tries to apply complexity theories to understand aging. And he's quite a fan of hormesis. So the idea that subjecting yourself to stresses actually strengthens you.
Yeah.
But let's say the original view of hormesis is that small amounts of bad things are good for you, but what we rather believe from our complexity point of view is that what you really need is a kind of a power law distribution of bad things.
Yes.
Short
Yes.
but intense,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
longer but less intense.
Yeah.
Instead of having one very long, very low intensity, I think it's better to have a very big variation.
Yeah.
And especially in terms of physical exercise, that's something most of us are doing. The training regime is that instead of running 20 kilometers always the same pace, you sprint once, and then you walk along it, and then you run a little bit, and you
Yeah.
vary this whole pace.
Mhm.
And that's much more effective. It works much better in terms of building up your physical condition.
Mhm.
And what I was saying before, that article I read about those guys that were doing muscular exercises and that stopped a bit and then started again.
Mhm.
That's a too simplistic case, but again it shows that irregularity actually is good. Irregularity actually helps you get more for less effort.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And I think it's, in essence, it's always this order from noise principle. Do you know the original von Förster article in which he introduced that?
Mhm.
Prigozhin have also used it as order from fluctuations,
Mhm.
and then some other people, and then
Mhm.
they've used it in simulated annealing. I think lots of people have kind of developed it independently.
Mhm.
But von Förster is a cybernetician who wrote, I think in 1961, a paper about the principle of self-organization, in which he quite nicely summarizes the whole idea.
It's on self-organizing systems and their environment.
Yeah, and he also makes the link with entropy. But that's a principle that has always inspired me a lot, and I've always tried to apply it to lots of things. And let's say the latest addition I have made is this idea of the power law. That you shouldn't just make random variation, but you should have variations with a power law distribution. Of course, with a power law distribution, in nature you get this kind of power law distribution, but that means that from time to time you get a perturbation that's so high that you don't survive it. So the trick is that you have the whole range of variations up to the point where you get irreversible damage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can stand some damage, you can afford to break a leg, but not more than that, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the really dangerous sports I wouldn't do. But I wouldn't mind a sport like judo where I could break a leg or something like that. Or
Base jumping.
base jumping, these are the kind of challenges where it may go too far.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in society, maybe we should think of something like that. I seem to remember that in our discussions with this panel, that there were also some people suggesting that injecting more variation in the social system, like in the financial system, might also help to make it more robust.
Go to
Like
work
you
from
were
time
saying
to
with the
time.
Go to
gurus.
war from time to time.
Yes. Go to work from time to time.
That's one of those irreversible variations that I wouldn't go. But like you say, the gurus that have their own, often very different views of what should be done, but that stick to them pretty strongly, and that in that sense kind of pushing people away from the herd behavior.
Mhm.
Well, and in science and technology, it's the problem of innovation it's good that you have lots of small startups that try out very many different things, most of which will fail, but it's much better than having a few big corporations trying to optimize and do it everything in the most efficient way, because at some moment it turns out that solution is no longer viable and then the whole company disappears.
Yeah, this is what happened with pharmaceutical industry for quite a while.
Yeah, the pharmaceutical
try to
industry.
revamp it. This way.
The pharmaceutical industry is in that sense very unstable in that they put an enormous amount of investment in one or two drugs that are very specialized for very special things. And if then it turns out that this drug has a side effect that's pretty dangerous, then they are in big trouble.
Yeah.
Well, you told us that you're also working on giftedness. Do you see any connection between this? Because when you speak about creativity...
well, creativity is a major part of that, obviously. I think we haven't gathered too much knowledge on the links between networks and giftedness. In the sense how to enrich gifted people with new connections, new situations, and special environment for their own kind of development. Yes, in the sense, what is a special position of a gifted person in a social network, for example, we don't know too much about that, actually. Yeah. Right, maybe that is not the typical...
One of the big problem of the gifted people is that they don't seem to fit into any of the classical...
Could they be the weak links?
Yeah, in fact, yes. That's actually very interesting, and I think you know much about that. That how different environmental changes may positively affect a gifted person, and not always in the sense or in the area where he or she is really gifted. So, for example, later on it will turn out a wonderful engineer figuring out wonderful solutions for different things, but at the beginning, his or her education was musical education a lot. And it was all of a sudden developing these skills, very interestingly, of engineering, for example, or vice versa. Well, not to talk about encouragement, when it happens many times in Hungary, we have a significant Roma population, and people of that population are usually having a very low social background. And they have to have a self-esteem first. And many times the self-esteem comes from sports, because that is quite easily, I mean, it's like
the blacks in
it's identifiable,
US.
So it's undeniable, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are very good in jumping, or I don't know, that's a fact. I mean, that cannot be denied. And then the person realizes that, well, I can be good in something. Then I can be good in mathematics as well. I am in fact good in mathematics as well. So, and then it goes on. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's like in the US also, the blacks were doing boxing or basketball, and only later they started to discover that they were also good at some other things.
So now we use it for catching these people, actually. So we purposefully are not looking for mathematics talents among Roma people, but we look for the sport guys or whatever, and then we encourage them, and it turns out that, oh wow, they are talented at this, they are talented at that, different things. So, or singing, or drawing, or, I mean, these are, again, undeniable things. I mean, you draw it, that's nice. I mean,
but you also have another type of gifted person who is so creative that, as you say, he doesn't stay much in any field long enough to show that he is better than the others. And those people are most difficult to recognize, and they are usually the most creative.
Yeah, and they will never be good in school in any subjects because of this. Yeah.
Or they might be good, but not exceptional, because they do a little bit of everything and don't put much effort into it, and have all kind of hobbies and play music, but none of it good enough to be exceptional.
Yeah.
But the fact that they can combine all that itself is exceptional.
Yeah. I think now as the people who are dealing with gifted children are knowing a bit better each other, even cross-country wise in Europe, experiences can be now exchanged much better.
Yeah, I'm
than
starting to get contacts with the people here in Belgium, and internationally I regularly get emails, but usually from people who recognize themselves as being gifted and we didn't know it, and who it's something that I heard about it, and then I usually encourage them, but I don't have the time to be busy with them. We need more networks.
But sometimes, I mean, my experience is that sometimes a single encouragement can do a lot. So, I mean, we shouldn't underestimate the effect of that. I mean, I have several stories when people write me an email that I remember that 10 years ago we were talking for 10 minutes, and then I did that, and I was going to this direction. And, you know, I have already forgotten that 10 minutes a long time ago, but for him or her it wasn't. So I think it's very important.
That's true. And now it's probably less of a problem, but it used to be that especially for women it was so that the stereotype of a very smart person was always a man. It's Einstein or it's Darwin.
Yeah.
And women that are very smart, they tended to think there's something wrong with me. That, like, there's an anecdote I had in one book about giftedness, about a girl that thought that she was the most stupid in the class because she always had so many questions to ask. But the others didn't ask questions because they simply didn't understand what it was about.
Yeah. But then, if a woman is excellent, then she may live longer, like Montalcini. And she's 103 years old, I think, or maybe 104 already.
And she's still active.
And then she is still active, both socially and scientifically. Yeah.
And that's quite a record, I think. Scientifically active after 100. I would sign for that.